Tolerances were off by 0.003 inches on the main bearing assembly. I could feel it in the vibrations before the gauges even confirmed it. That's what 18 years on the shop floor teaches you. Your hands know the truth before the computers do. My name is Roger Stevens. Most folks at the plant call me Mac. I'm 47. Been running quality control at Midwest Manufacturing here in Akron since I was 29. Same company my dad worked at before the steel mills started closing down. Built my way up from the line. Got my engineering degree nights at community college while Betty was pregnant with our first. I designed the quality system that keeps us at 99.2% efficiency and saves the company $12 million a year. The ISO 9001-2015 certification that lets us bid on automotive contracts. That's my framework. The clients trust our specs because they trust my oversight. But apparently, 18 years of keeping this place running smooth doesn't translate to a decent paycheck. Bradley Walsh sits across from me in his corner office with the parking lot view, same speech he's given me for the past 6 years. Let's revisit compensation next quarter, Mac. Next quarter. Always next quarter. The kid's 39, fresh MBA from some fancy school back east, been here 2 years, and thinks he knows manufacturing better than guys who've been turning wrenches since before he could spell synergy. I check my watch. It's a Timex my dad gave me when I started here. The afternoon shift change is in 20 minutes, and line 3 needs recalibration. But here I am, listening to Walsh explain why my 18 years of keeping this place running doesn't merit a cost of living adjustment. Betty's been working double shifts at the school district just to keep up with the mortgage payments. Mac, loyalty builds legacy, he says, folding his hands like he's delivering some profound wisdom from his business school playbook, legacy, right? Tell that to my mortgage payment. Tell that to my son's college tuition bills. He talks about market conditions, about how we're all tightening belts. Meanwhile, the board just approved executive bonuses tied directly to efficiency improvements, the same improvements my quality protocols delivered. My systems, my oversight, my relationships with suppliers, who won't even return Walsh's calls without me in the room. I don't raise my voice. Never do. Learned that from working the floor, you keep your cool when things get hot, just ask for clarity. So there's no timeline for when we might discuss this seriously. Walsh leans back, gives me that patient smile executives practice in the mirror. We need team players right now, Mac. People who understand the bigger picture. Team player. That's code for shut up and take what we give you. I've heard that line before, usually right before they stick you with overtime and no extra pay. The bigger picture, I built that picture. Every quality checkpoint, every inspection protocol, every supplier relationship that keeps this place running. Walsh wasn't even here when we almost lost the Johnson Controls contract because of defective parts. I'm the one who redesigned the testing procedures, worked 80-hour weeks to get us back in compliance. I leave his office with my spine straight and my jaw set. No dramatics, just a quiet understanding that something fundamental has shifted. The tolerance levels in my patients just went out of spec, and when that happens, you either recalibrate or you replace the part. That night, I sit at our kitchen table with my laptop, not to update my resume, because it's already solid, and apply to Industrial Solutions, Inc., the largest parts manufacturer in our sector. Betty brings me coffee and doesn't ask questions. She knows that look. After 22 years of marriage, she knows when I've reached my limit. One click. No hesitation. I'm not asking for a raise anymore. I'm asking for an exit. 3 days later, Walsh calls me back into his office. This time, he's not smiling. He's got a printout on his desk, my LinkedIn profile. Some recruiter's comment highlighted like evidence in a criminal case, so it's true. He says, sliding the paper across like he caught me cheating on a test. You've been interviewing, I don't blink. On my own time with my own equipment. Same way I got my degree. Nights and weekends, never on company time. His jaw tightens, and I can see that vein in his forehead starting to bulge. You chose disloyalty, Mac. There's that word again. Loyalty, like employment, is some kind of marriage vow, and I just got caught stepping out. I chose options, I reply evenly, same as any smart businessman would. He leans back, arms crossed like he's about to deliver judgment. I don't keep people who hedge their bets. This company needs commitment. There it is. The executive version of righteous indignation. 18 years of keeping production lines running, maintaining certifications that let us compete for major contracts, and protecting his quarterly numbers, all reduced to a morality lesson about betting and commitment. Commitment. I committed 18 years to this place while he was still figuring out which tie to wear to his internship. So what are you saying? I ask, though I already know. Seen this movie before with other guys who asked for what they were worth. I'm terminating your employment. Effective immediately.
No warning, no severance discussion, just a badge deactivation and a call to security.
Like I'm some kind of threat, instead of the guy who's been keeping the wheels on this operation for nearly 2 decades. I gather my jacket, the same Carhartt I've worn for 10 years, without drama. 2 guards escort me past the break room where I've had coffee with these guys every morning since Clinton was president, past the quality station where I trained 3 generations of technicians, most of whom make more than me now. Walsh watches from his glass office, like a man convinced he just restored order to the universe. The guys on the floor stop what they're doing. Tommy Rodriguez, who I hired and trained 8 years ago, gives me a nod. "This is bull, Mac," he says under his breath. Security keeps walking, but I hear him. They all see what's happening here. That night, my phone buzzes while Betty and I are watching the news. Text from Gary Hudson, our CFO, the only executive who ever pushed for fair wages around here. "Did Walsh really just fire you?" By morning, the shock had crystallized into something more useful: clarity. Walsh thought he'd eliminated a problem employee who was getting too big for his britches. What he didn't understand was that I'd built the foundation holding his operation together, brick by brick, procedure by procedure. 6 years ago, when Midwest Manufacturing started chasing those big automotive contracts, Ford, GM, Chrysler, I designed the quality assurance protocols myself. I structured the ISO certification timeline, the inspection benchmarks, and most importantly, the continuity clause buried in Section 12 of every major agreement. At the time, it was framed as client protection. If the quality oversight supervisor departed, the client reserved the right to review, renegotiate, or terminate within 30 days. I never imagined I'd be the quality supervisor triggering that clause. That morning, our 3 largest clients requested urgent meetings, not with Walsh, but with the board. I wasn't in the building anymore, but I knew how this would play out. These weren't emotional reactions from upset customers. They were contractual obligations being exercised by billion-dollar companies that don't mess around when their supply chain gets disrupted. Clients don't panic. They assess risk. And when the guy who's been overseeing their quality standards for years suddenly disappears, that's a red flag bigger than a factory smokestack. Walsh reportedly addressed the board with his usual executive confidence. "It's temporary noise," he said, according to what Gary told me later. "Transitions happen. We'll adapt. Transitions, sure. But not when your ISO 9001-2015 certification and $34 million in annual contracts depend on one person's oversight and methodology. Not when that person designed the inspection protocols that keep defect rates under 0.8% minus, the standard that got us those contracts in the first place." By noon, I got a call from Jim Martinez, quality director at Autotech Industries, one of our biggest accounts. Autotech supplies parts to Ford and Chrysler, and they don't take chances with their supplier relationships. Jim's voice was measured, professional, but I could hear the concern underneath. "Mac, we were surprised to learn about your departure. We're invoking the continuity clause on our current agreements." Invoking. Not considering, not reviewing, invoking. The clause wasn't vindictive when I wrote it. It was practical business insurance. Clients had signed those agreements because they trusted my systems and oversight. Remove me from the equation, and the whole foundation shifts. "I understand completely, Jim," I told him. "You've got your own customers to protect." By late afternoon, the first formal notice was delivered to Midwest Manufacturing Autotech's intent to initiate contractual reassessment under Section 12 of their supplier agreement. Walsh might have dismissed it as posturing, but the legal department knew better. Reassessment rarely ends in contract renewal when trust has been broken. That evening, Tommy Rodriguez called me at home. "Mac, you should see what's happening on the floor." Walsh came down this afternoon, tried to give us some speech about moving forward and embracing change. Half the guys just walked away. Billy Kowalski told him straight up that firing you was the dumbest thing this company ever did. Billy's been here 25 years, started the same week as my dad. When Billy Kowalski calls you an idiot, word gets around. My first week at Industrial Solutions felt like stepping into a different world. No political games, no glass office sermons about loyalty and team playing. Just work, structured, efficient, respected work. Steve Coleman, the CEO, stopped by my workstation on day 2. He's a guy who came up through operations, knows the difference between theory and practice. "We don't chase talent here, Mac," he said, leaning against my desk. "Talent walks in when it's ready." It wasn't flattery. It was company policy backed up by competitive wages and respect for experience. By midweek, my phone started lighting up. Former clients, old contacts from industry trade shows, same question every time. Are you available for consultation on quality systems? I kept my answers professional. Happy to discuss opportunities through industrial solutions, nothing more. No pressure, no sales pitch. In this business, your reputation speaks before you do, and mine was saying plenty. Meanwhile, Walsh started doing what insecure executives do when reality comes knocking, rewriting the story to make himself look better. Through the industry grapevine, I heard he was telling people I'd violated confidentiality agreements, that I'd actively recruited clients away from Midwest. He forgot one important detail. Every email has a timestamp, and every contract has clear language about solicitation. You can't rewrite digital history just because it makes you look bad. By Thursday, Autotech's legal department sent a formal clarification to both companies. Mr. Stevens did not solicit our business. We initiated contact regarding quality oversight continuity. 16 words that killed Walsh's narrative deader than a broken lathe. Industrial Solutions legal team filed the correspondence without comment. Coleman just nodded when I showed him and said, "Good, facts speak louder than politics. I didn't need vindication, but it felt good to have the record straight." By Friday, the first official termination notice arrived at Midwest's corporate office. Autotech was pulling their $8 million contract, effective at the end of their 30-day review period. When billion-dollar companies exercise contract clauses, they're not bluffing or negotiating. They're protecting their own supply chains. That evening, Gary Hudson texted me. Board just demanded Walsh explain the revenue projections. Emergency meeting Monday. For the first time in 18 years, I wasn't the one defending the system or explaining why procedures matter. I was watching the system respond exactly the way it was designed to, by protecting quality and accountability. The following week, the story inside Midwest manufacturing shifted from damage control to crisis management. I wasn't sitting in those boardroom meetings, but former colleagues kept me updated. In a town like Akron, news travels fast, especially when it involves jobs and local families. Walsh opened Monday's board meeting with his standard corporate playbook. We're experiencing temporary market headwinds and minor operational adjustments. That's MBA speak for I have no idea how to fix this. Gary Hudson, who's been the voice of reason in that building for 20 years, cut him off mid-presentation. Revenue projections are down 22% in 1 week, Bradley. That's not market headwinds, that's structural failure. 22%, that wasn't a fluctuation you could blame on market conditions or seasonal adjustments. That was hemorrhaging, and everyone in that room knew it. Walsh's response was predictable as sunrise. Blame external factors, restructure some departments that had nothing to do with quality control, and insist everything would stabilize once the transition period ended. He even had the nerve to suggest that losing me might be a blessing in disguise, a chance to modernize quality oversight with fresh perspectives. Code for hiring someone younger and cheaper who doesn't know the difference between tolerance specifications and wishful thinking. But clients don't wait for transition periods when their own quality standards are at risk. They don't care about fresh perspectives when their reputation depends on reliable suppliers. Within 72 hours, 2 more major accounts, Johnson Controls and Magna International, initiated their own contract reviews. The dominoes were falling exactly as any experienced manufacturing professional could have predicted. The ISO certification that Midwest manufacturing depends on for major contracts was scheduled for emergency re-audit. When the International Organization for Standardization gets word that a company's quality oversight supervisor has been terminated during active contract periods, they don't send congratulation cards. They send auditors with clipboards and very serious expressions. Walsh tried one more desperate play that week. He called me directly. His voice was different when I answered. Less sermon, more strain. Like a man watching his carefully constructed world fall apart one contract at a time. "Mac, let's be reasonable here. Come back, we'll discuss compensation seriously this time." I was reviewing tolerance specifications for a new client when my phone buzzed with his call. I stepped into the hallway, away from my new colleagues who didn't need to hear old business. "You had 18 years to discuss it seriously, Bradley." I kept my voice level, professional, the way my dad taught me to handle conflict, calm and direct. Silence on his end. "Then, this isn't about the past. The board is overreacting to temporary market adjustments. I can authorize a significant salary increase. Salary increase, not an apology for calling me disloyal. Not acknowledgement that firing someone for seeking better opportunities was wrong. Just another business transaction. I'm not available, I replied. And I'm not interested in negotiating under pressure. You're making a mistake, he snapped. And there was the real Walsh, the one who shows up when his control gets threatened. You built your career here. Walking away throws that all away. No, I said, checking my Timex. My break was almost over, and I had real work to do. I built my skills here. My career is what I make of those skills going forward. He tried one more angle. Think about the guys on the floor, Mac. You're hurting people who counted on you. The guys on the floor like I hadn't been thinking about Tommy and Billy and the rest of them every day since this started. Like Walsh gave a damn about anyone making less than 6 figures. You terminated me, I reminded him. Effective immediately, remember? You made that decision for everyone. I ended the call and walked back to my workstation. Coleman glanced up but didn't ask questions. Good leaders don't need explanations when they trust your judgment. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Midwest manufacturing stock, which had been sliding all week, opened down 18% after the market got word about the contract cancellations and pending ISO review. By lunch, financial news outlets were running stories about operational disruption and key personnel risk. When billion-dollar automotive companies start questioning your reliability, investors notice. When your ISO certification gets flagged for emergency review, insurance companies notice. When your stock drops 18% in one morning, everyone notices. Gary Hudson called me that afternoon, emergency board meeting tonight. Walsh is scrambling. What's the mood like, I asked. Like a funeral where nobody liked the deceased. By Thursday, Industrial Solutions announced my promotion to Senior Quality Director with equity participation and strategic oversight authority. No games, no let's revisit this next quarter, just recognition of value and fair compensation for experience. During our department meeting that morning, one of the younger engineers, bright kid, reminds me of myself 20 years ago, Minus asked me about workplace loyalty. What do you think about sticking with a company long term? He said. The room got quiet. These were people who'd heard my story, knew what I'd been through. Loyalty works both ways, I answered without hesitation. You give it when you get it. When it becomes one-sided, it's not loyalty anymore. It's just habit. Nobody laughed, nobody argued. They understood because most of them had been there undervalued, overworked, told to be grateful for the opportunity to make someone else rich. Meanwhile, back at Midwest Manufacturing, the crisis was escalating beyond what any damage control could handle. A third major client, Magna International, formally canceled their contracts citing quality assurance continuity concerns. That was $6 million in annual revenue walking out the door. The local UAW chapter started making noise about job security. When union reps start asking questions about management decisions that threaten jobs, smart companies listen. Walsh wasn't smart. He was stubborn. Tommy Rodriguez called me Friday evening. Mac, you should see the plant. Half the quality techs are updating their resumes. Walsh tried to blame you in a company-wide email, said you abandoned your responsibilities. Billy Kowalski posted a response that got forwarded to everyone in the building. What did Billy say? That firing the best quality manager in Ohio was like cutting off your nose to spite your face, only stupider. Billy never was one for diplomatic language, but he had a point. The weekend brought more bad news for Walsh. The Akron Beacon-Journal ran a front-page story about Midwest Manufacturing's contract losses and pending layoffs. Local papers don't usually cover corporate drama, but when a major employer starts hemorrhaging jobs, it becomes community news. The headline read, Local manufacturing plant faces crisis after key employee termination. The article was factual, professional, but devastating. It detailed the contract cancellations, the ISO review, and the stock collapse. My name appeared once. Roger Stevens, an 18-year veteran quality manager who was terminated last month. Walsh's name appeared in every other paragraph, always in connection with executive decisions and leadership challenges. By Monday morning, the situation had moved beyond crisis into full-scale corporate emergency. An investment fund that had been in final negotiations to expand Midwest Manufacturing's operations released a brief statement. Due to operational instability and executive risk factors, we are suspending our investment discussions indefinitely. Executive risk factors. Not market conditions, not competitive pressures, leadership failure. The fund had been prepared to inject $20 million into plant expansion and new equipment. That money would have meant 150 new jobs in Akron, 150 families with steady paychecks and health insurance. Now those families would keep struggling while Walsh tried to save face. Gary texted me the news, investment pulled, Board meeting tonight, Walsh might be done. I forwarded 3 new client proposals to Coleman's desk and scheduled next week's quality audits. When you're building something new, you focus on the foundation, not the demolition happening down the street. The emergency board meeting wasn't subtle. By Tuesday evening, Midwest manufacturing stock had lost 34% of its value in 2 weeks. The financial press was using words like freefall and structural collapse. When your company becomes a cautionary tale in the Wall Street Journal, board members start asking hard questions about leadership. Linda Foster, the board chair and daughter of the company's founder, didn't waste time with corporate pleasantries. According to Gary, who sat in on the meeting as CFO, she opened with a simple question: how did we go from record efficiency to potential bankruptcy in 2 weeks? Walsh tried his standard deflection playbook: market volatility, competitor interference, employee sabotage, everything except taking responsibility for his own decisions. This is coordinated disruption, he told the board. Stevens orchestrated this to damage the company. Linda Foster cut him off mid-sentence. She's been around manufacturing her whole life, grew up in the business when her father built it from nothing. She knows the difference between cause and effect. No, Bradley, this is consequence. You terminated our most experienced quality manager during active contract negotiations. What did you expect would happen? The vote wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no theatrics, just raised hands and recorded minutes. 7 votes in favor, 1 abstention, 1 opposed. Effective immediately, Bradley Walsh was removed as Chief Executive Officer of Midwest Manufacturing. The company statement released that evening was corporate sterile. Leadership transition effective immediately. Interim management appointed. Commitment to operational stability. In business language, that translates to, you're fired and don't let the door hit you on the way out. I was reviewing supplier quality reports when the news alert popped up on my computer screen. I read it once, then closed the browser tab. There was nothing to react to. The system had functioned exactly as systems do when accountability is finally applied. Gary called 20 minutes later. It's done. Walsh is out. Linda Foster is taking over as interim CEO while they search for permanent leadership. How are the guys on the floor taking it? I asked. Like Christmas morning, Tommy Rodriguez bought a round at Murphy's Tavern for anyone who wanted to toast good decisions finally happening. That evening, an email appeared in my inbox from an address I hadn't seen since the day Walsh fired me. Subject line blank. Message: you destroyed everything I worked for. I stared at it for a long moment. No apology, no acknowledgement, no reflection. Just blame displacement from a man who couldn't accept that actions have consequences. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. I hadn't destroyed anything. He had simply encountered the results of his own choices. 6 months later, the quiet feels different. Not tense, not uncertain, just earned. Betty and I were able to refinance the house at a better rate with my new salary. Our son finished his engineering degree without us having to take on more debt. Our daughter's looking at colleges now, and for the first time in years, we can have those conversations without stress about money. Industrial Solutions announced my promotion to Vice President of Quality Assurance last month. Equity stake, profit sharing, decision-making authority. No games, no next quarter promises. Just recognition of value and fair compensation for experience. During a leadership meeting last week, one of the department heads asked about employee retention strategies, what keeps good people from leaving. She wanted to know. The room looked to me for an answer. These were professionals who'd heard my story, understood the cost of undervaluing experience. Respect, I said without hesitation. Pay people what they're worth. Give them authority that matches their responsibility. Don't mistake loyalty for weakness or experience for expense. Nobody disagreed because they'd all seen what happens when companies ignore those principles. Midwest Manufacturing survived, but barely. Linda Foster brought in new management, renegotiated some contracts, and managed to avoid layoffs through what she called aggressive cost management and operational restructuring. The company Gary texts me updates sometimes. The place is stabilizing, but it'll take years to rebuild the reputation Walsh damaged in 2 weeks. 3 of the quality techs I trained ended up following me to Industrial Solutions. Tommy Rodriguez, Billy Kowalski's nephew Mike, and Sarah Coleman, the first female quality inspector Midwest ever hired. Good people who deserved better than what they were getting. Walsh landed at a consulting firm in Columbus, according to LinkedIn. Strategic Operations Advisor, the kind of vague title that doesn't mean much but sounds impressive to people who don't know better. His reputation in manufacturing circles is finished, but there's always a market for consultants who promise quick fixes to complex problems. I didn't celebrate his downfall. Didn't need to vindication enough just watching competence get rewarded for once. Last month, I got a call from a reporter at Manufacturing Today magazine. They were doing a feature story about workforce retention in the automotive supply chain. What advice would you give to manufacturing companies struggling to keep experienced workers? She asked. Stop treating experience like it's disposable, I told her. Stop thinking you can replace 20 years of knowledge with a fresh college graduate and a computer program. And understand that loyalty is a two-way street. You get what you give. The article ran last week with quotes from industry leaders, union representatives, and workers. My section was titled, "The Cost of Undervaluing Experience." Betty cut it out and put it on the refrigerator, same as she used to do with our kids' report cards. Freedom costs. It cost me 18 years of patience, the comfort of familiar routines, and the security of knowing exactly what each day would bring. But what it returned was immeasurable. Self-respect, fair compensation, and the knowledge that I don't have to accept less than I'm worth. This story doesn't end with explosions or dramatic confrontations. It ends with quiet satisfaction and steady progress. I didn't destroy Bradley Walsh. He destroyed himself the moment he believed control was more important than competence. What this experience taught me is simple but not easy. Respect must be mutual, or loyalty becomes exploitation. When you know your worth, you don't accept less. When you document your value, you can prove it when necessary. And when you build systems instead of just following orders, you create something that outlasts any individual personality. You are not disloyal for protecting your future. You are not selfish for demanding fair treatment. You are responsible for your own worth, and nobody else will fight for it if you don't. If you're in a situation where your value isn't recognized, where your experience is taken for granted, where next quarter has become a permanent answer, remember that you have options. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and let the system prove your point. Real value can't be replaced, only overlooked. And when fairness finally kicks in, truth has a way of showing itself. Sometimes the best revenge is simply building a better life somewhere else and letting your former employer explain to their board why everything fell apart after you left. When a company treats experienced workers as disposable, they're not just losing an employee, they're losing the institutional knowledge that took decades to build and can't be replaced by a fresh MBA with a PowerPoint presentation.